Okay, it's day 89.1, and this is Luke Rosiak's article from last evening regarding the access of servers by the Awans. The Pakistanis here conclude that there was unauthorized access to congressional servers. So if you read through this information, you get the feeling that all these different computers were configured as thin clients, meaning they all go back to a central server. Now, there's 44 Democrats here that are involved, so they're all Democrats, and they're all having their information go back to the central caucus server. So in one sense, you could say, well, there was some kind of implicit permission given to these folks. But then there was also 15 offices that were breached that were not a part of the shared employee system that was going on here. So we have at least 15 of the 44 Democrats that had a breach of data. Now, what I've said before is, again, following the data, it's more bringing people in from overseas, bringing them in from Canada, where they've kind of potentially started their career in North America, bringing them in from Pakistan, and then getting that first job in the House of Representatives so that they then can go on to work in Washington and in other parts of Washington. That seems to be the flow here. So I'm not necessarily saying that this is drug business or this is anything in that sort. What it seems to be more of is getting people validation stamps, if you will, that, hey, they work for the Congress, they work for this particular representative. That gives them a certain credibility when they go into their next employer. And then the eventual goal seems to be to get them to be a private contractor so that they can then do pay-to-play business in these different members' districts. And here's the 15 members, though, however, that are logged into illegally. So they crossed the line as a shared employee at some point to now collecting information for all the different members. Again, some of these connections that were open, when you're a thin client, you can have your desktop presented to you from a remote server, actually, that's in Pakistan. So all your data, and there's 2 accounts here out of all these 44 accounts that are logged into thousands of times, while the other systems are not logged into very much at all. So we have some key facts here. They were logged into as the systems administrator. Okay, so that's root access. Certainly, if there was any classified information on these different systems, those were available and probably sent to Pakistan. They did not work for 9 of the 17 offices to which they belonged. So those offices were logged into potentially illegally. So there's maybe some spying going on there if they were trying to undermine particular representatives. But here's the Dropbox. Was installed on 2 of the caucus computers. Then the computers went missing, basically. And so Luke does a good job here of talking about the Washington Post's cover story that was written by Sean Boberg and debunking that story based on the amount of information going and the continuous open connections that the 2 administrators had for months at a time. So again, of course, when you start asking some of the people who employed these people, they've said, oh, this is the first I've ever heard of it, even though the crimes happened almost a year ago. And they've been talking about collusion of the Trump campaign for that entire year. So it's truly stunning that Cleaver, for instance, here from Kansas City hasn't heard anything about it. Of course, Yvette Clarke hasn't heard anything about it. She's quoted down here a little bit later in a video. So Yvette Clarke hasn't heard anything about it, even though it was 120 iPhones that Imran was sending on her budget to his house. And again, as we've said, the early February report came out. This is almost a year ago now. Sergeant of Arms Paul Irving, Kiko, as we've mentioned many times, the Chief Administrative Officer, and of course Jamie Fleet now as a new name, a new entity. So we'll keep digging into this, but again, I make the point that the server was stolen. This server later disappeared. And I also make the point that Becerra gave a false copy to the Capitol Police. We need to get the copies of the police report. I am going to be applying for a writ of mandamus from Judge Contreras to get those police reports. We need to see all the totality of the criminal activity of Imran Awan to have a chance at preparing a proper response for all the conspirators. But one thing is for sure from this report, that there was a conspiracy and these servers were logged into illegally. So that is confirmed fact.